Hello, welcome back to Growing Walls, and we wanted to give you another video. This one is primarily about pre-baby's arrival, but it's going to dip into after the baby's already here. And this video is going to be talking about just expectations and fears we had coming up to the delivery and the welcoming of our baby boy, and then some of the fears that we still have. The first fear on the list, and this isn't a countdown, these are just some of the things that we think of. The first one that I had, being a person that grew up playing sports, you know, football, basketball, baseball, things like that, is what if I drop the baby? What if I drop my baby? And so I was actually really nervous about that. Not that I fumbled a lot in high school. I'm just saying, dropping a baby is way different than dropping a football. I remember when I got to hold one of my friend's babies, I was really holding it solid, secure, and they made fun like, Steve, relax. And I was like, well, what if I fumble? He said, you won't fumble. And so that's always been one of my fears is what if I drop the baby? And so far we haven't. Don't do that. But I've heard that they're really resilient. But don't try it.
So one of the biggest fears that I had before and even still now is scheduling and accommodating last minute things. Like if he were to get sick, or if the nanny were to get sick and she can't watch him, or something happens, and like we don't live close to family, and we both work full time, and my schedule changes every month, sometimes every week. So finding last minute arrangements of people nearby is difficult, and we haven't had to do that yet because we're quarantined and he hasn't gotten sick and he doesn't really go anywhere. But that's something that I was afraid of, and that we'd have to figure out, and we just have to find a way to deal with it when it comes up. So,
and we kind of recently just moved here, so our pool of helpers has shrunk a lot.
Close friends and family we don't really have here. I mean, we have our church family, and that's who we would go to, but it's kind of hard to lean that hard on someone that you haven't even known for a whole year, you know?
Another fear that I know made me nervous was, what if this kid doesn't sleep? I have a coworker that they just had a baby a little bit, maybe 4 months before we did, and we have photos of him at his computer desk like this. And I was just like, oh man, that's gonna be me. And so that was just one of my fears. What if this baby just doesn't sleep? Can I buy a cot from REI and put it under my desk at work and just schedule naps for me? So that was one of the fears going into it, was just, you know, she works full time, I work full time. If she's working nights, I'm the only one at home. What if that baby doesn't sleep that night, or he sleeps like little hour cycles? That's gonna be rough on me when I go back to work. So that was another one of the fears that was a little bit of a burden before baby boy arrived. Mm-hmm. And still could be a fear in the future, because they said there's this 4-month relapse thing.
4-month sleep regression.
What is this? Who termed that? Stop that. But yeah, you know, we're not at 4 months yet, but it's coming.
We're close, yeah.
So who knows?
Fortunately, he's been sleeping super great, which we didn't really expect, but that's been a blessing.
Yeah, we'll take it.
One of the fears that I had, and this is probably more so because I work in medicine, and I work in pediatrics, so I see a lot of kids who get diagnosed with new things, or have certain defects, or have certain trouble with certain things, and children who grow up with medical illnesses. I see patients who are newly diagnosed at 2 years old, or at 6 years old, or at 10 years old with different things like cancer, or chronic diseases, or GI problems, and or an accident happens, they choke on something, or they break something, have this terrible car injury. And so just being exposed to that in the medical field, I think, causes a little bit of underlying fear and anxiety in me, thinking if that can happen to any other healthy kid, it could happen to my kid. And so that's something that I constantly have to kind of struggle with and think about.
And she does. She thinks about it a lot.
Not a whole lot. But
I've had to ask you, hey,
it's
don't tell me that
something I'm
stuff.
exposed to all day, every day.
That's
and
true.
So it's hard not to think about that.
That's true. I know for me, another fear that I had was, you know, I'm sure all you can relate out there. How much is this going to cost? You know, babies are expensive. We have a wonderful insurance. We got insurance through Jenna's work, and my insurance through my work was still good, but hers was better, especially around having a baby. But I'm just thinking, what if we didn't have that insurance? What do you do? It's astronomical how much it costs nowadays to be in the delivery room, and if something happens now, but we didn't have any complications. Ours was a very smooth birthing process. You know, it was rough on Jenna, but we got to go home as quickly as we could. We stayed just as long as they made us stay. You know, it wasn't because we needed to stay, it was just policy how long we stayed in the area for the hospital visit. But then after that, you know, clothing, food, you know, Jenna mentioned earlier, one of the fears, what if the baby's not healthy? What kind of costs going to those doctor visits? So there's a whole, diapers, lots of diapers, lots of wipes. But there are a lot of wipes in those little packs, but lots of diapers. Granted, we aren't buying food yet, but that's coming. So just the thought of, and even you have to get a car seat before you can go home. Mm. That's a purchase before the baby arrives. So yeah, just the thought of how much this is going to cost, and we're not even talking about education yet. That's still coming.
One of the fears that I had, and this also comes from working in pediatrics, is breastfeeding. Because I know of all people, I know that it can be really hard for a lot of people to breastfeed. Like if the baby doesn't have a good latch, or if they have tongue tie, or if your supply is low. So I had a little bit of fear about that before baby came, just because I know that that's very common and a lot of moms struggle a lot with it. And I know there's like no shame in switching to formula if you need to, and we had some formula on hand if we needed to. We didn't need to. It ended up being a lot smoother than I expected, but that was one of the fears that I had beforehand.
Another fear is potentially, what if the baby doesn't stop crying? And this kind of lines up with that whole, what if the baby doesn't sleep? Well, what if he doesn't stop crying? Is it normal for a baby to continually cry? The answer is yes and no. If the baby doesn't stop crying, there could be a problem. Babies cry for a reason. You can go back and look at our 5 ways to soothe a 1-month-old. Usually when they cry, there's a way to soothe them. But if they won't stop crying, the question becomes, is there something wrong internally I don't know about? Is the baby sick? And so that thought of just, if the baby continues to cry and I can't make them stop crying, you get then the fears and doubts of, am I adequate enough? Does the baby not like me? Does the baby like my spouse more? Are we just bad parents? Is there something wrong with my baby? And just fears go on and on and on, and they don't have to, but that's just one of the fears I had going into this, is if the baby doesn't stop crying, what do I do?
Just a little side note on that topic. Sometimes babies do cry for no reason for long periods of time. Fortunately, our baby almost always has a reason, but yeah, it can be very frustrating for some parents when they're crying for hours and there's nothing wrong with baby, there's nothing wrong with parents. It's just sometimes babies cry. And
that's the only one that I haven't been able to like figure out with our baby, is when he's tired. That's the, after we've tried everything twice, maybe he's tired. And that happened at church on Sunday. The last 2 Sundays. It's just, he gets to yelling. You gotta figure it out. But like Jenna said, sometimes the baby's gonna cry.
One fear that I had right before delivery, like in the weeks leading up to delivery, was, when will he come? I worked in the NICU in January. My due date was February 2nd. And so I am big pregnant, and I'm seeing all these little tiny preemie babies that came too early and are struggling to breathe and struggling to eat. And so that was one of my fears in January, was what if he comes too early? But then a more realistic fear was, what if he comes too late? So we passed my due date, and Stephen was actually a big baby when he was born, and I was a big baby when I was born, so I was worried that I was gonna have this enormous toddler coming out of me. So I convinced my OB to let me be induced a few days after my due date, and so he came then. And
we're glad we did.
Yeah, I'm very glad. He was 9 pounds 5 ounces, so a big baby as expected. But yeah, that was one of the fears and expectations, was, when is he gonna come?
And then along with that, Jenna kind of hinted at it with the preemie baby. We then had the concerns, in our pregnancy, what happens if he comes out with defects? We're not going to love him any less, but the challenge then becomes, what kind of lifestyle are we going to live? There's lots of different syndromes and
chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm. So those are things that different parents have to face. And that's a fear. That's a fear for everybody. And it's just like, what if the baby comes out with one less limb? And whenever we went to do the ultrasounds, they're like, oh, yep, got all hands, got all his feet. So those are really good things to do. Go to the baby checkups, go get your ultrasounds and whatnot, because that can help you with some of the fears and anxiety you might have going into having the baby, but just the developmental issues as well. So that's something that was a pre-birth fear, and it's now a post-birth fears. Some of these things are going to happen that don't pop up until 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 2 years. And so that's something that's still a little bit of a fear, but it's out of our hands. But it's just one of those things that parents think about. And then another fear that just comes with having a baby is, how much time is it going to take and how's it going to affect my life? I mentioned earlier my coworker sleeping at work, and it wasn't a problem. He doesn't just sleep at work, but he passed out. He was exhausted, baby. He had a couple bad nights in a row. For us, it's just, how's it going to affect our lives? Are we going to be able to maintain some of the hobbies we did before? I love reading. I love exercising. I like YouTube. I like church. I like being in community with people. And the questions become, can I maintain that? Can we keep that going? And so the answer is yes and no. You have to give and take. Sometimes you can go do group activities, but now we're in COVID-19. So some of the things that we used to do are gone anyway.
A year ago this month, we were in California on vacation. And I remember on that vacation, we would see people with their children, like traveling, like in the plane and stuff. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, it looks like so difficult to travel with children. Or hiking, and they had to like bring diapers and bring formula and bring all this stuff for and like a carrier, and like what if the child gets tired? And I just remember thinking, man, I'm so glad that we don't have kids. We can just hike to the top of this mountain by ourselves. Well, now you have a kid. The day we got back from that trip is when we found out we were pregnant. So that's a little bit of a fear. We can't do all the things travel-wise. Fortunately, right now we're not really traveling because COVID, but yeah, in the future. Now
we don't hike up mountains, we hike up the hill to the school up the street with the baby on our back. So
yeah, we take him with us.
Yeah, so fitness though, that's we're taking baby for daily walks, sometimes twice a day, just because we can. It keeps him distracted, keeps him happy, keeps us with the cardiovascular system working a little bit. So yes, time is going to be one of the components that changes how you use it, what you're doing, but just because you have a baby doesn't mean your life has to stop. Encouragement to you, this was a video of some of our fears and whatnot, but stay tuned because we're going to make another video about all the positives that have come along with baby boy, because the pros definitely outweigh the cons and outweigh the potential cons.
Most of these fears were put to rest, and he's healthy and he sleeps and he eats and everything's fine.
Rationally irrational. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please give this a thumbs up. If you have something you want us to discuss, or maybe a product review you'd like us to do, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you, love to interact with you. And if you like this video, like the content, please subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.